Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev. This is one of the most highly anticipated fights of the year, and I just feel like something is going to go wrong and we will not see this fight. The same thing that happened to Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane. Someone is going to slip on a banana peel. It might be Islam, it might be JDM. But if we're fortunate enough to not have that happen, we're going to see a very great fight. And my prediction for this fight is, before I even get to that, let's consider every single factor. Islam Makhachev, in my opinion, is the best fighter in the UFC, right next to Ilia Topuria. If anything, I'm not mad at anyone who would interchange the two. But I think Islam is the best. And when you look at his arsenal, he is the most well-rounded fighter in the UFC. I don't want to say it's unequivocal. I feel like MMA is a subjective sport, but me personally, that's what I think. When you look at what helped him get to where he is today and the names he has victories over, that being Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier, Renato Moicano, Alexander Volkanovski, these are all very good fighters. And I would want to discredit him for some of his victories because they were short notice fights, featherweight fights. But come on, guys. I still feel as though a featherweight Alexander Volkanovski is a tougher matchup than a lot of guys that are in the top 10 of the lightweight division right now. And when you look at the second fight, yes, it was short notice, but he knocked out Volk in the second round. We have to give him some sort of credit for that, right? And Renato Moicano, it was a short notice fight again, but remember, it's not like Renato didn't have a training camp. He was training to fight Beneil Dariush, and Beneil had to pull out of the fight because Renato was facing Islam. So it's not like Renato was sitting off the couch or he got off the couch. No, he was fresh. He just didn't train for Islam. Perhaps he would have trained to defend the Dars, but come on, guys. Renato Moicano is a black belt in BJJ. You think he hasn't trained how to defend the Dars? And it's not like he didn't have any time at all. He had a few days. Not saying days is enough. All I'm saying is we have to give Islam some sort of credit for pulling off that victory. But I do feel as though, don't hate on me for this, I do feel as though Islam's grappling is somewhat overrated. And notice how I said somewhat overrated. Overrated doesn't mean it's bad. I already told you guys, he's the best fighter in the UFC, in my opinion. But why do I say it's overrated? Going back to his fight against Dustin Poirier, yes, he won the fight, but Dustin stole 2 rounds. It's not like Islam was always able to take him down at will. There were some failed attempts, and while you might argue that he was just giving Dustin some variables to think about, have him thinking so that he could have more success on his feet, even when he did want to take down Dustin, Dustin managed to defend some of the takedowns. So it's not like Islam is going to be able to just take down JDM at will. While that may happen, it's not something that I feel we can assert, and we have to explore the possibility of JDM defending the takedowns. And I feel like he's given us reason to believe that he could potentially do that, judging from his fights against Gilbert Burns, Bilal Muhammad, and Basel Hafiz. The Basel Hafiz fight was not that impressive, and you could tell that he still had a lot of improvements to make because he was jumping gillies, ending up on bottom, and he was getting controlled. It's not like Basel was landing that much ground and pound, but he was still controlling JDM, and you could tell in the second fight against Gilbert, something about it was off. I felt as though JDM was being taken down with ease, being controlled, and he was losing the first 2 rounds on the scorecards. I personally had it 1-1 going into the fifth, but then I later on found out that he broke his arm, and perhaps that played a role in him not being able to defend the takedowns that well. And guys, it's not like it was a fracture. It shattered. It freaking shattered, guys. So that definitely had an impact on the fight. But then I noticed significant improvements in his takedown defense and scrambling ability in his fight against Bilal Muhammad, whom I think is a better wrestler, just better grappler in general than Gilbert Burns. Maybe Gilbert has the better BJJ, but it's not like he has the ability to really impose his will. He's more of one of those fighters that'll really give you a tough fight, but just won't win, you know? So with JDM's fight against Bilal, he defended the takedowns very well. People say that Bilal didn't attempt takedowns. He tried to use his Canelo boxing, but guys, come on. He attempted takedowns. I even posted a video about it on Instagram. So I think we have to give JDM some sort of credit for defending those takedowns. In the striking department, I think both Islam and JDM are very good, but notice how Islam has almost 20 fights in the UFC, and in none of them was he able to land over 100 significant strikes. Compare that to JDM, who's been able to do that on 3 occasions, or at least 3. So I believe that JDM will probably have more volume unless Islam is able to mix in the takedowns as well. So personally, me, considering that JDM is going to be more powerful as well, I will have him winning the striking exchanges. And Islam could win the striking exchanges if he mixes in the takedowns and perhaps even get a Darce. That's his favorite submission, and I think that's something that JDM has to prepare for. If he does not train how to defend the Darce, it's going to be a long night for him. So I do think he'll be able to do that with Craig Jones in his corner. But I wouldn't be mad at anyone who has Islam winning by Darce in the first or second round. But me personally, I feel like JDM is going to pull off the upset of the year and beat Islam by decision. I say decision because JDM wasn't able to knock out Kevin Holland, Basil Hafez, and Bilal Muhammad. So why would I pick him to win by KO? We have some people saying JDM is going to finish KO in the later rounds, which is possible, but I just don't see that happening. So yeah, that's my pick. JDM by either unanimous or split decision. What do you think?
Well, I might have to disagree because obviously it's a very close fight. You know, these guys are both arguably in their prime or are very close to it. You know, you have Islam, he is without a doubt the greatest lightweight of all time. And then you have JDM, who's just beaten Bilal, who beat the arguable up and coming welterweight GOAT, which was Leon Edwards. And if I look at this fight, I think both guys have a good chance of victory. And that's because, well, if you're looking at Islam's chances, he's moving up a weight class. And as we've seen throughout many of the divisions, lighter man skill is a real thing. Like if you look at Volk moving up, giving Islam massive problems, Pereira moving up from middleweight to light heavyweight, you know, John Jones moving from light heavyweight to heavyweight. There's countless examples of, you know, generally the lighter divisions having more skill. And when the people from those lighter divisions move up, they tend to have a lot of success. And Islam, I think, is just, he's going to be fresh for this fight. You know, he's not cutting a massive amount of weight. You know, I think he's going to be in a better mood, which may seem a bit of a superficial thing, but generally, when you have a fighter who's, you know, feeling themselves, you know, they're not in a bad mood because they're going through a tough weight cut, they do generally perform better. And I think that could also play a factor. As for example, if you look at his Dustin Poirier fight, which was a tough fight that he did still win, he was, I heard that that was a very tough weight cut. And then also, he was obviously going through a lot of illness, which could also be due to the weight cut. And he also had staph infection. But so I think this is going to be the best Islam we've ever seen. You know, he's moving up, not cutting weight. You know, it's a big new challenge. And I think he's very motivated for it. But then looking skill wise, I think Islam obviously has very good boxing. I mean, he outboxed Dustin Poirier, not completely, but he did, you know, overall outbox him. And then he has very good kicks. I mean, head kick and Volkanovski, that's pretty impressive in my books. And I just think that he'll be able to make it like it's obviously like JDM, I believe, has the best boxing in the UFC, but I think Islam, without a doubt, can make it at the bare minimum very competitive. And but then the crucial point is obviously, I'm not saying Islam's going to knock out JDM because I don't see that happening. The crucial point is the grappling. And I believe that obviously Islam does sometimes struggle to get the takedown because in comparison to Habib, Habib would like to lunge forward with these blitzes in the takedowns, which would make them easier to come by. Islam likes, you know, a bit more of a clean version of striking, you know, staying on the outside, working the jab, the roundhouse kick. So then it can also mean there's more telling that they're coming. But when he does get the takedowns compared to Habib, he is a much better submission artist, in my opinion, because he won't just like Habib waited to tire you out and then submitted you, whereas Islam will jump straight on the submission, like we've seen with Moicano, like we've seen with Dustin Poirier. I mean, it just takes a second and he's got that Darce locked up. or head and arm choke. And if you look at him, I mean, he's just been looking unstoppable with his submissions lately. I'd argue he's one of the best, if not the best, submission artist in the UFC right now. And if you look at JDM's best performance, which was Bilal Muhammad, Bilal Muhammad is a great wrestler, but he's not a submission artist that's brutal. Like, I can't really think of a fight where he's finished via submission. He is the decision king. But I think that I think Islam will take JDM down. And I think that there's a very high likelihood that he will submit him because JDM loves to scramble. And scrambling is great against a chain wrestler who isn't really looking to submit you because then you will take their dominant position and you gain your own dominant position. But while you're scrambling, that does leave openings for submissions. Like we've seen, you know, Moicano attempted to scramble and got submitted. So I think that is a very dangerous for JDM. But if I'm also looking at the upsides for JDM, he's obviously big for the weight class. He's going to be taller than Islam, and he has the best boxing in the UFC. So on the feet, I think Islam needs to stay very wary because although I can't see JDM necessarily knocking out Islam cold, I could definitely see him, beating him up for 5 rounds in if he is on his A game, or maybe even a TKO against the cage. And then JDM obviously also has very good scrambling ability. He has Craig Jones in his corner, who helped Alex Volkanovski with his fight against Islam. So he obviously does have knowledge of Islam and the general Dagestani style. But in summary, if I'm looking at this fight, I just think Islam's in a good place. He's moving up, he's motivated, and I think that the fight will start. I believe that, very quickly Islam will realize that JDM is a very tough opponent. JDM may stuff a few takedowns early, but I honestly cannot sit here and say that I don't think Islam will be able to take down JDM. As I mean, if I'm correct, well, apart from the Alex knockout, he's essentially taken down every opponent he's fought. And yes, even though he failed some takedowns against Dustin Poirier, he still took him down several times and submitted him. And he is a very good grappler as well. So honestly, I cannot see a world in which Islam doesn't take him down. And the likelihood of Islam submitting him, I believe, is very high. And I think even even in the worst case scenario where Islam doesn't get the early submission, I think people also underrate his ability to adapt in the fight and his general fight IQ. As if we look at the Poirier fight and other earlier fights, it's not always fully easy for him, especially when the fighters have had a full camp. But I think he has just a very underrated fight IQ, and I think he's just coming into his prime right now. And I think the lighter man skill will prevail. So I'm predicting Islam Makhachev via second round submission.
All right. I like that. I like that. I think that makes sense. And as much as I am JDM's biggest fanboy, I have to acknowledge that that might happen. That might happen.